Sometimes in life we make some very irrational decisions, and that's what happened with Christian Wood and Kevin Porter Jr. this past week with the Rockets. Christian Wood refused to check into a game. The Rockets were punishing him because he was late for COVID testing, and Kevin Porter Jr. at halftime threw an object and left the stadium in his car. Now, they both made up for it because Kevin Porter Jr. hit a game winner versus Washington, and Christian Wood had 22 and 11 in that game and shot 6 for 6 from the free throw line. But this event did cause some discussion on Twitter and in the basketball community about whether or not what the Rockets should do with Christian Wood, and if Kevin Porter Jr. is stable enough to be a cornerstone player for the Rockets. And I've heard some people say, like Chris Mannix from Sports Illustrated, that they should even waive Kevin Porter Jr. or even trade him. And Christian Wood, I think a lot of Rockets fans kind of are on the edge of the fence with him in terms of if they want him or not. So I want to ask you, what do you think about this situation? Drew, I'll start with you, since this was going to be also what you talked about on the This Week in the NBA segment.
So this is pretty interesting to me because on top of Kevin Porter's, his antics, unfortunately, then you have the next time that we see him hitting a game winner, a big time shot, and you have a sports broadcaster saying something so egregious, so outlandish, very unprofessional of him, where we should be celebrating Kevin Porter Jr. for hitting a great big time shot. We're not talking about the shot. We're talking about the call from the broadcaster where he mentions Kevin Porter Sr. and he completely mixed up what he was doing. He thought that Kevin Porter Sr. was his father who played basketball. Meanwhile, there was something that was going on where Kevin Porter Sr. was someone who was on trial for manslaughter, who had to do something with some kind of gun violence. And he said that he pulled the trigger like his father. And that was just something very just egregious and unnecessary that the sports broadcaster did not have to say at all. And there's just times and place where there's no place or time for anything like that, not even at all. And especially in a moment where you have Kevin Porter Jr., who has been going through a lot of adversity throughout his career, finally steps up to the plate, hits this big time shot. We're not talking about the shot. We're talking about someone who really should be irrelevant in this scenario. And it's unfortunate that I had to come to that. And I wanted to speak on that before I talked about the negative with Kevin Porter Jr., because as you guys know, if you guys have listened to me for a while, I'm a big fan of Kevin Porter Jr. and his skill set and what he can do. His field goal percentage hasn't been great. His 3-point percentage hasn't been great, but I like his playmaking abilities. I like the way that he can score in multiple facets. I like how his game is pretty two-dimensional, where he can be a point guard. He can also be a shooting guard. But mostly, I think we're starting to see with the Rockets that he is a shooting guard. It's very tough for him to play that point guard position. That being said, it's unfortunate that he put himself in this situation. You understand that he left the Cavaliers to come to the Rockets. This was his second chance. You borderline have to be perfect if you're Kevin Porter Jr. And last season, he showed that he has nothing but talent to offer to the Houston Rockets. This season, it hasn't really come to what we were expecting. And similar to Christian Wood, another player who last year was great for the Rockets, was in all-star considerations when he was playing, gets hurt, kind of loses a little bit of momentum. That being said, comes into the season, we have high hopes for him and the young Houston core that surrounds him. And I don't think that the Rockets would be better off without these two guys. I think Christian Wood right now, who's their leading scorer, it would be hard to lose him and continue to have some kind of success or whatever kind of success that the Rockets are having right now. That being said, you also have to understand that the Rockets are a young core and they're up-and-coming team, so they don't necessarily need the piece like Christian Wood. That being said, I look at a KPJ and how young he is, and I would like to see KPJ be one of the main pieces to the young core of the Houston Rockets. It's just a matter of both of them getting out of their own egos, of not putting their egos to the side, saying that, basketball is a team sport. I need to come together, be a leader for this organization that not only needs people to step up to the plate to take that mantle of the loss of James Harden. And that's where KPJ really was going to step in and get that opportunity. KPJ just unfortunately is not the same ball player that Harden is. It's that simple. Regardless of where KPJ was drafted, he just does not have the same talent that James Harden has shown in his time in Houston. So do I think that they should move on from them? I don't think so. I think that these two guys need to mature without a doubt. I think that you lose these two guys, it would be pretty detrimental to the Rockets as of their roster that as it currently is constructed. But for the long term, I think you need KPJ. I think you need Christian Wood because these guys are young enough that you could build pieces around them and maybe start to see a change in this organization. But again, on to the sports broadcaster, we need to stop with that because how many times have we seen in the past where I remember one specifically where Russell Westbrook was playing. I think he had a couple stretch plays where he was just out of his mind playing great basketball. And the sports broadcaster, I'm not going to repeat it because it's so disgusting, comes out and says something so egregious where you're taking the joy and the what should be a moment of respect and admiration to what these players are doing, and you're belittling them for who that person believes that they are, which is disgusting. And we need to start to evolve and trend in a direction where we're treating these basketball players as human beings and not for how one individual may see them for years and years of uneducated individuals. And we need to start to trend in a direction where we see everyone as equal and start treating with equity.
Yeah, I mean, the comment was definitely racist, but do you think that the commentator thought that his father was actually Kevin Porter? Because he said that, oh, I didn't know, I thought he was the son of Kevin Porter, the basketball player.
You can always come out and try and correct your statement.
It was a wrong statement nonetheless, but
you should never.
Do you believe that he actually thought that? Do you believe that?
I don't. I mean, even if that's what he believed, why there's time and place for if that's what he meant, there's a time and place. But you cannot, even with even if you have to question it in your mind a little bit, don't say it.
You know, I'm also a KPJ fan. I like KPJ. Joel knows that. I'm really like KPJ's dope. I'm also a Josh Christopher fan. Love Josh Christopher. Love his game. Love his play style. You know, that's my dog for real. I don't think they need to move on from KPJ. I think KPJ is 22 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Very young.
Extremely young. I think in Cleveland, he showed flashes, but it just wasn't the right fit. Obviously, he's young. He has to figure it out mentally, but I think, they should stick with him a little bit. Christian Wood is a different scenario. He's dropped in points, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage, free throw percentage. And, Drew, you love 100 possessions. Like, you love, that's your favorite stat. That's your favorite stat of everything.
PER for sure.
Yeah, let me just, his plus minus per 100 possessions last year was a -4, right? His plus minus net per 100 possessions last year was a plus 6.5. This year, it's a minus 10.4 in plus minus per 100 possessions. In net, minus 3.4. He has dropped, and we can go to advance. He's dropped in every statistic this year. And with Houston, you have to look at it. They have a lot of draft picks. Like if you look at their draft, they have a lot of draft picks, and they're probably not going to be good for this year, next year, maybe the year after that. There's a lot of talent coming in. And with their rookies, I think they have one of the best rookie classes this year. I think their rookie class has showed out this year.
Who showed out?
Sengun to Josh Christopher to Jalen Green, they've all showed out. Garuba has shown some flashes, but he still has ways to go in a sense. But Jason Tate, he's good, but he's 26. They'll probably move on for him. But Kenyon Martin, when he gets his opportunity, he's really good. I think Christian Wood is a tradable piece at this point just to bring in more draft picks. I think at 26 years old, I think Christian Wood is the type of player who can really only benefit from a great point guard. And I don't think KBJ is at that point in his career. I think what he showed us last year, granted, 21 points a game, it was in 41 games. It wasn't enough for us to really say this can stick. You know what I'm saying? Granted, Houston took a gamble, and it was a good gamble because his contract isn't nothing crazy. He's not getting paid 20 mil, 18. He's probably getting paid like 15, 16 mil, I mean, maybe a little bit less than that. So he's a tradable piece. He's somebody who can fit. Charlotte is looking for a center. I think he'll be great in Charlotte. Places are looking for centers, and his skill set fits certain places. I think Houston's in a position where they're like, bro, we're going to have draft picks, and there's going to be guys that fit us better at that center position I think Christian Wood is definitely a tradable asset. And at this point, I think he wants to be traded. I don't think he wants to be there. He's not playing like he wants to be there. So I think, honestly, they should think about trading Christian Wood, keeping KPJ, giving KPJ the opportunity to really blossom. I feel like John Wall, if he played, he would have helped KPJ. And a lot of the situations, he could have mentored him, definitely helped him, but him not. That mentor point guard, and it because Rubio did it for Garland. That mentorship as a point guard really helps. You know what I'm saying? So I think John Wall would have definitely helped KPJ. John Wall has had his troubles in the past, so they could have definitely communicated and bonded in that perspective. But I think KPJ is still really young. He's a guy with a lot of talent. But Christian Wood is a guy you can get a lot of things back. Not a lot, but you can get something back, at least a first rounder. So I think you should trade him.
So I just found this out now, but what makes the whole comments by the commentator even worse is that Kevin Porter Jr.'s actual father, who is Kevin Porter Sr., he was charged with first-degree murder after shooting a 14-year-old girl. And he spent 4 years in prison over it. And his father he passed away in 2004 after he was shot 5 times. So what makes the comments even more disparaging and just insensitive is the fact that your exact analogy is a real life thing that happened to KPJ. So I think that's what makes it extremely insensitive. And on top of that, just the comment itself, even if the situation didn't touch home directly to KPJ, it's a racially insensitive comment. And I frankly think that he probably should be out of a job. I don't like to call people out on jobs, but like that is a fireable offense. It is, and that's something that's insensitive. And even if he did think that KPJ's father was a former NBA player, I mean, the fact that you're a commentator and you don't know for a fact if who his father was is just irresponsible on your part for not preparing for it and not knowing. I mean, that's your job to know those type of things. They even like I've done broadcasting at the college level, and even in college, they give you bios on players and all that stuff. So the fact that he really didn't even care to research for himself it's really alarming. But JC, what do you think about the Rockets? Do you think that Christian Wood should be a piece or looking to trade, or is he a part of this young core for the future?
I kind of agree with what Rivers said. I feel like he's somebody that you can trade and it really wouldn't hurt the team. Obviously he has some talent, so there's probably something that you can get in return from him. And just like Rivers said, the Rockets have a lot of picks, and right now they're really not in win now mode. I know they had that little 8-game win streak, but it's like they're still bottom of the barrel, bottom of the standings. And to your point as well, Joel and Riv's point, I mean, they had a really good draft. I mean, Jalen Green, Josh Christopher, Sengun, who Joel's really been high on. I've been keeping my eye on him since he's brought him to life for me. So yeah, they have the requisite pieces to move on from Christian Wood. I honestly never thought, like in my honest opinion, I never thought Christian Wood was like that good in my opinion. Like I never saw him as a franchise or cornerstone player like the Rockets did. I mean, Detroit gave up on him, and now the Rockets gave up on him. I feel like, he's just somebody that you can move on from. As far as KPJ, I mean, he's had his the talent is there obviously, but he's had his troubles. In Cleveland, I believe he got into an argument with something that was about a locker, like he didn't want to move from a locker. So, that was obviously they decided to cut him because of that situation. And then this problem in Houston throwing something at an assistant coach. I mean, it doesn't look good, but the product on the court from him, last year he had to get a 50-point game against Milwaukee, which was one of the sickest 50-point games I've seen in a while, because that predominantly was mostly on Drew Holiday, and he's one of the top defenders in the league. Rockets fans were calling him out about him not being a pure point guard. And we did a segment, and in a span of 7-8 games, he averaged about 9, close to 10 assists a game. So this is a kid that accepts the challenge. This is a kid that, he has certain types of abilities in his game that he can tap into. But as far as Christian Wood, just being on the fact that Sengun and all these guys that were drafted younger, it as a Rockets fan, I wouldn't be upset to move on from Christian Wood. You have the draft picks, and to Riv's point, I mean, there's a couple of games that I've been watching because my brother is a Rockets fan, so we watch the games together. He doesn't really seem like he wants it. Like he doesn't seem like he's like in that state of like in that mindset to play with a team like that. And I'm of the mindset if you have a player that if you have any doubts that the player wants to be on your roster, you got to get rid of him. Christian Wood, I'm not going to sit here and say that he's not a talented player because he's a talented player. He's a good player. He's a modern day, I guess, stretch 4, stretch 5, can shoot, can rebound, can score inside. He has a nice game, but it's definitely expendable just because of how successful Houston's draft class was this year. So I'm on board with keeping KBJ. He has to obviously keep intact mentally with all the outside issues. But as a baller, I'm keeping him and Christian Wood. I mean, if I'm the Rockets, I wouldn't bat an eye getting rid of him, to be honest.
I think Şengün is going to be their starting center for the future. And because of his emergence this year, and he's coming to the NBA more ready than everybody expected, but I was expecting it because he was a Turkish League MVP. I know Riv had some really strong doubts about Şengün and his translation, but he's proven Riv wrong, and Şengün has proven he is Nikola Jokic 2.0. I think Şengün is going to be the franchise center. He's an amazing passer. He has great post moves for his age. He is still very young, and Christian Wood is very expendable because of that. When talking about Kevin Porter Jr., I won't lie. I think this season has made me kind of less in on him. He's been very inefficient. I mean, he's shooting 36% from the field, 33% from three. He's averaging 12 points. That's just inexcusable. I was planning on him making a most improved player jump this year. And you mentioned the stats about net rating and stuff like that. I do think those stats can be a little flawed only because the Rockets are a bad team. Because they're a bad team, the net rating is going to be bad automatically. I don't know what his on and off numbers are, but I think that would probably be like a better stat to use in that situation. But I'm not totally in on Kevin Porter Jr. I've actually been really impressed with Jalen Green these past couple of games. I mean, the last 10 games, he's averaging 18 points, shooting 46% from the field and 40% from three. Jalen Green has really picked up his game. And earlier in the season, I did say that I think he's going to have a similar rookie season to Anthony Edwards. But he's been picking it up sooner than Anthony Edwards did. And Jalen Green can make a Rookie of the Year case for himself with his recent play. And if he does this moving forward, I think the cornerstone piece is Jalen Green. And I think everybody else are just pieces around him. KPJ maybe can turn into that. I think we're starting to realize that becoming James Harden is much harder than it looks. I know that everybody had this expectation on KPJ to do that, but to actually be that is a different story. And Houston Rockets fans were blessed with Harden for 8 seasons, and it's really hard to find a replacement for that, and they're in that stage right now.
2 questions for you, Joel. 2, this is specifically for you, buddy. Can Şengün play the power forward position? That's question number 1.
He can play power forward, center, point guard. It doesn't matter.
Okay, so now that goes into my next question. The Rockets have the number 1 pick.
Projected, yeah.
No, I'm asking you. Like, they hypothetically, they get the number 1 pick. Who do you go, Chet or Paolo?
I'm going
because you think Şengün is going to be the starting 5.
I'll be honest. As much as I love Banchero's game, I wouldn't take Chet over Banchero if I'm any team, to be honest. Well, it depends. Maybe in some situations, but I think Paolo's a better player. Banchero's the best fit. Actually, Banchero's the best available player at that spot.
You would go with Jabari?
I would go with Jabari. I think Jabari Smith is the better fit for them. They need a wing, and I think he'd fit right in. I think he's a better pick for them.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to get your idea on that part.
Well, yeah, the Rockets are 11-28 right now. They have the 3rd worst record in the NBA, which means that they would be projected to get the 3rd overall pick, and I would take Jabari Smith 3rd. And if you look at the history of the 3rd overall pick, that pick usually turns into the best player in the draft, at least in most cases. MJ was the 3rd overall pick, and you see how good he is. Outside of RJ Barrett, 3rd overall picks have kind of been hits. So
I was going to say Tatum was number 3. Melo was number 3.
Yep.
Melo is the worst out the 4.
Yeah, but he was still a great pick.
Oh, yeah, he's a great pick. I'm saying, like, out of D-Wade and LeBron.